What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Proselytize or Apostatize with your hosts, Jordan and Jared. We've launched a hostile takeover of this channel. And as our first act, as atheists taking over this channel, we thought we'd have a nice, polite conversation with the theists who actually run it.
Yeah. Before we get started, though,
well, let's introduce everybody. So
Yeah.
I'm Jordan, and Jared. We run the Reason to Doubt podcast, and the two Davids were kind enough to invite us onto their show to have a talk about whatever we wanted. So today we're going to have a talk about miracles. We're going to see what our theists think about them, what miracles they've had. Maybe they'll convince us. Maybe by the end of this, we'll be 5 theists on the call. I don't know. But yeah, so before we dove into that, Jared had a good idea to kind of break the ice and, loosen everybody up. We thought we might play a game that we've decided to name Bible Buddha Smith.
So what we're going to do is we're going to read 3 verses. One verse, it'll be 3 rounds. So we're going to read 3 verses, and you guys will get to guess which source they came from. So whether it came from the Bible, whether it came from a Mormon holy doctrine or source, or from something that Buddha wrote.
Bible Buddha Smith, all right?
And these aren't like crazy ones, so, if you get them wrong, it's not a big deal. So round one.
Only your eternal soul may be in the balance. No pressure.
So we'll do A, B, C. So A, whoever would tend me, he should tend the sick. B, seek learning, even by study and also by faith. C, greater love has no man than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Do you guys need me to read those again?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So A.
So if this is, do we have to guess
which one's the Bible?
Guess which one's the Bible.
Okay, gotcha.
So A, whoever would tend me, he should tend the sick. B, seek learning even by study and also by faith. Or C, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends.
I would say C is the Bible.
Good job. That was the easy one.
Yeah, you got it.
We wanted to warm you up with an easy one. All right.
Yeah.
Round
and
2.
that's from John 15:13.
Yeah. The first one, A, was Buddha, and B was the Book of Mormon. All right. So round 2. By small and simple things are great things brought to pass. That's A. B, there is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. C, the avaricious do not go to heaven. The foolish do not extol charity.
B is the Bible.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Good job.
You guys are on point. You're doing really well for this.
That was the Book of Proverbs, 14:12. A was the Book of Mormon. C was Buddha.
All right. Round 3.
Final round.
The final round. This is it. You guys are perfect so far. So let's see if we can keep this going. A, the faults of others are easier to see than one's own. B, as they were white, that they may not be enticing unto my people, the Lord God did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them. C, there she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions was like that of horses.
Oh, read the first one again.
It's the last one. And it's really too bad that Caleb Jackson isn't on the stream, because he quotes that verse on my page every day.
Yes,
that is correct. Good job.
Ezekiel 23:20.
The first one was Buddha. The second one was Mormon, Book of Nephi. All right, man, you guys know your Bible. Good job.
Good job.
So, I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourself on your own show, or if you want us to just get into it.
No, if they don't know any of us by now, well, I do want to say hi to Joseph Wooten. He was on not too long ago, but I mean, you guys are family, so I think everybody else knows you guys. So, but yeah, Joseph Wooten, what's up, man?
His video froze.
Also known as Lag. That was his nickname in high school.
Yeah, that was his nickname.
Sniper Frog.
So,
well, he'll come back when he comes back. So, like I said, today we thought we'd talk about...
I'm going to be here about 30 minutes ago.
You're breaking up a lot, Joseph.
Yeah, you're breaking up a lot, Joseph. Why don't you try to log out and I add you back to the stream?
We might need a miracle with his internet connection.
True.
Speaking of miracles.
Yeah. So Yeah, so today we're going to talk about miracles. Basically, we just wanted to get a feel for like where everyone stood and whether we can reasonably believe that they happen or did happen at any time and why. So to start with, since you guys are the theists, the miracle believers, presumably, what do you guys think counts as a miracle? Like, if you were to define miracle, how would you define it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of bad definitions of miracles out there. Like I think David Hume defined them as breaking the laws of nature or something like that. I think the best way to define a miracle is probably as something, as a divine action that could not be accomplished by the natural or the physical order alone. So something that nature or just physical reality can't accomplish on its own. And in the Christian tradition, at least, something that it's usually a sign from God. So there's going to be some kind of, like context for it to come in. So in some way, it's giving evidence or just confirmation that something is from God.
I would be similar to that. I like Aquinas's definition in Samuel Clarke, so it's kind of like a rendition of that. It's when an agent outside the natural world inserts or changes something in the system that the natural world could not bring about through its own regularity.
So basically, if something happens that you wouldn't expect if nature were all there was.
It gets that depends on what you mean by wouldn't expect it, because you could have, I don't know, I don't like defining it as something that's unexpected per se, because you could have something that's unexpected that is still perfectly explicable by nature. So I would say it's something that exhausts the explanatory resources of natural capabilities. So something that just really can't be explained by reference to what we know that nature can do.
Okay. So would you say, and also, Paulman, you had mentioned that it had some sort of, I guess, significance to it, right? That it's not just an event or an occurrence, but it has to have some sort of, I guess, religious significance, or no?
In the Christian tradition, at least, that is pretty much, as far as I'm aware, every miracle that we have recorded in Scripture, it always has some kind of confirmation of divine approval upon it. So, yeah, it's not like God is just creating, this octopus out in the desert and makes him drop from the sky and he falls through the sand and comes back, where no one can see it, and he just does that for kicks. In the Christian tradition, there's always a reason for it.
I mean, but you can't prove he's not doing that.
I mean, if I was walking in the desert and saw that, I would be like, that's a miracle.
I would be like, I need to drink more water or something.
I need to drink more water. It's a mirage.
Yeah. So do you guys, I presume you both think that miracles have occurred in the past. You're
Absolutely
Christians,
not.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's obvious. Do you both think that miracles still occur today, or are you more cessationists?
Well, I would say you can believe that they happen today without being a cessationist. Cessationism doesn't commit you to the belief that no miracles happen. It just means that you think that these special gifts of speaking in tongues, having the ability to just go out and heal people, you think that has gone away, but you could still believe that miracles can happen today. I would be a cessationist with regard to the charismatic gifts, but I'm still open to the possibility that miracles could happen today.
Yeah, and I might not be so strict there, but I follow the similar line there. I do think that, miracles can happen today. So I think that with that said, I agree with David. I mean, I'm not a full cessationist, and I think that cessationist entails that, all those religious miracles and stuff don't happen anymore. A lot of people think that way, and I don't agree with that. I think they can still happen, and I think they do at times. Yeah.
So do you guys have known anybody or experienced any miracles yourselves, or like any kind of firsthand or secondhand knowledge of miracles?
Have you or someone you loved been affected by a miracle?
If so,
Alan.
Well, I know many people who claim to have experienced miracles, but given my particular background, I'm skeptical of some of these people's ability to judge that. So I would say no, I've never experienced anything that I could definitively categorize as a miracle. And most of the people who I know who think they've experienced miracles, their testimony is very suspicious to me.
Yeah.
Do you want to throw anybody particular under the bus, David?
Nope.
I promise we won't tell anyone. This is just between us 5.
I'm explaining it.
And everybody live that's watching.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Just
I would say that I've experienced stuff, irregularities. Like I would say that, I couldn't, like David, I don't think I could definitely say it was a miracle. But I mean, things have happened that I can't quite explain. One is my grandfather was one in about 300 and some million that get struck with a certain type of disorder. And the longest people live with that is only 2 months. And he ended up living 25 years with it, which is really, you're talking about mini strokes almost every day. So, it's pretty wild. And can that be explained? I don't think medical science has gotten there yet. Maybe they can. Maybe it wasn't a miracle. I think nature also allows for irregularities. I mean, we learned that through quantum mechanics. So I do think that there's, things are improbable. Those things like my grandfather would be improbable, but they wouldn't necessarily be impossible. So, yeah. And just a personal experience when I was young, I was heading down on this windy road, skipping school like an idiot with about 4 of my friends. And it was a very windy road, and you can't see around some of the corners, right? So, like, when I turn the corner, I'm going about 60 in like a 35, and trying to get away from the school security guard, thinking he's still chasing me, even though he was probably sitting in there like, those idiots. But I was speeding around that corner, and there was a car stopped on that bend where I couldn't see, and I had this notion to go into the ditch to avoid hitting the person. And I remember that there's a car on my left. And the only thing that I remember is that we just stopped, right? We just stopped. And there's smoke coming up from the tires and stuff like that. And I don't know, I don't even remember, and either does anybody in the car with me remember that there is that screeching involved. The car just stopped. So can I explain that either? But can I definitely say it was a miracle? No. So just irregularities is what I would define that as, and God could have used those. So, I mean, I'm open to that.
I appreciate you saying, that you're saying it could have been and it could not have been. Like you're leaving room there for another explanation other than a miracle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Paulman, you said that you're skeptical because of your background of these miracle claims. What is it about these claims that makes you skeptical?
The capabilities of the people reporting them, because everything in my denomination that was like the slightest bit unusual or improbable, it was a miracle, right? So like you'd have a kid in the church who came down with like the flu or something, right? And everybody prays in the church, right? We got this prayer meeting that this kid will get over it, and they get over the flu, and it's a miracle, and pray that like it won't rain on the day that we're going to have a church picnic. We all have a prayer meeting, and then like it doesn't rain that day. It's a miracle, So like one that my parents told me a lot is that like, there was this one time where we had some medical bills, and we couldn't quite we didn't know how we were going to eat this week, and then somebody gave us all these cans of vegetables and beans and stuff, and that was a miracle. Well, those aren't miracles in that case. Like that could be an act of divine providence, but that's certainly not something that can't be explained to the natural order. And so just by a good definition, like the one that I think I gave at the beginning, that just doesn't qualify as a miracle. So some people are just very prone to claim that anything and everything that works in their favor is a miracle. And a lot of times it's just not. So that, is one reason for my skepticism.
Which is interesting because they usually only go the one way, right? Like, if it's good and it was a coincidence, it's a miracle. But like, if it had rained, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, they turned those into miracles too. But
I think the place I went to, they'd had just been quiet and wouldn't have said anything about it. Kind of like hang your head in shame and like look to the side.
I mean,
I went to a place too, guys, that would give us pins that said "expect a miracle" on it. So I know exactly what David's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of on that last point you brought up there, Jordan. I remember like a couple times where people, would talk about. This one guy, like he missed his train or something, right? And he thought it was such a terrible thing. But then who knows? Maybe that train got in an accident further down the road. So God could have been doing a miracle for him. So even when things worked out badly, then sometimes miracles got brought up.
But like, did it have an accident? I feel like we'd know. Like, couldn't you tell? Like,
way down the track.
This happened out in no man's land. I'm just saying that that's an example of kind of how they would think. Sometimes even when something didn't work for them, God works all things together for good, so it can be a miracle too.
I would say, do you think that God intervenes in the world today in ways that are not miracles, or would God intervening in the world by definition be a miracle?
No, I think he usually intervenes in the world in non-miraculous ways. So, and I think there's reasons for that, but yeah, I would say he definitely acts in the world in non-miraculous ways, and in fact, he usually does.
So things like changing someone's heart or stuff like that, is that the sort of thing you mean?
God could absolutely work through, something like that, or sorry, with. Wait! Was that a medical example? Because I was for some reason I thought you were
no. I meant metaphorically.
The feeling of their heart.
The feeling, or like the person with the vegetables. Like God, like wrote it on their heart to go give beans to so and so.
Right? Yeah. I would say that is not something that I would consider miraculous in any sense. Because I do think that God is just always interacting with people, but it's not something that's like going on with physical objects or something like that.
Okay. So basically, for something to be a miracle, it would have to be like something that's either impossible or like very unlikely, right?
I would go as far as to say that it's got to be impossible.
So, like when you said earlier that you didn't like Hume's definition, like breaking the laws of physics or whatever, that would seem to fit in that definition a little bit, right?
I mean, again, it goes back to how are you defining this, right? Like if by break or exception or something, you just mean something that's out of the ordinary, right? Something that is not, not something that's normally going to be done by nature. I mean, sure, I guess I could see how you could fit it that way, but like, then you've got objections you got to deal with, like, well, how come God's breaking his own laws and stuff like that? And so I prefer not to think of it that way. I'll just say it's something that God does, and it's something that epistemically, like for your own way of knowing this, it can't be explained by the natural order.
Okay. So in if we go back to like the New Testament or Old Testament, raising Jesus from the dead, miracle. Fig tree, is that a miracle?
I would tend to think so, yeah, because I don't think that's, at least when I read the story of the fig tree, it looks like it's something that like just happens too quick for something that nature can't do it that fast, as far as like I know, especially with the limited technology of the day. So yeah, I would say that would be a miracle.
Okay. And then why? So this is pure speculation, obviously, unless you have some doctrinal reason that I'm not aware of. But like, why do you think it was that God used to perform miracles like on the regular, so to speak, and then now doesn't?
I'm not convinced he ever did perform them on the regular.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say that miracles serve a purpose. They're signs. They're for something specific.
And if I think what you're getting at here is like, why do we see them happening a lot in the Bible, right? And so first thing there is that the Bible, it does span a good amount of time. So it's not like they all happened, all the time.
Right.
But if you even read how like the authors of Scripture view these things, like they have people being astonished by this stuff, right? When Jesus is doing miracles, like people are amazed, right? He's got people following him, even people who like aren't believers, but they just want to follow him for the miracles because, the whole thing presupposes that these are out of the ordinary.
Sure.
So, but miracles definitely were happening a lot. Same first century Christianity, right? Because people were converting because Paul was working miracles and Jesus working miracles and everybody was working miracles and, etc. So, is it just that was the season for miracles, but it's not this like sorry if you're luck, bro, you just don't get any? Is that
Yeah,
how
no.
it works?
No, that's a good question. And so I think the thing about miracles is that if they were the sort of a regular thing that happened all the time, then they would stop being miraculous, or at least stop seeming miraculous, right? So if it's even if it's something that we can't explain, if there's this regularity to it, then people will like start looking for an explanation, and they'll be like, oh, just because we can't explain this, maybe there is one, right? So if miracles become an everyday thing, then they stop serving the purpose that at least I believe that they're intended to serve, which is to confirm a message from God. And so the reason that we have them happening in the first century is because of it's Christ is claiming to be revealing God. And so as proof, evidence for that, then he performs miracles. And then subsequently, his apostles, they also perform the miracles because, they're still proclaiming the message, and so it seems it was still needed at that time. But that's why I would say that we have them at that time, but that they drop off after that because you don't want these to become a regularity.
Yeah, that's something I struggled with when I was a Christian, because it's clearly stated in John that Jesus tells that whoever believes in him is not only going to be able to do the works that he does, but they're going to be able to do greater works than what Jesus was doing. And that Jesus was anticipating that his believers in him would go out and be able to do works. It doesn't seem like he put a deadline on it. So like when I was a Christian, it's like, well, how come I can't perform works? And then, you have these charismatic churches or faith healers out there who are all like in the power of Christ. And then next thing you know,
the bodies hit the floor.
My aunt brought me to one of those when I was like 12. And I remember like the guy like did the little hand thing, and I like everybody else he'd done it to and fell down. I was like, well, I guess I better fall down.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've been slain in the spirit. I'll never forget that now, Jordan.
Yeah, I sure have. Yeah. I wasn't sure exactly why everyone was hitting the ground, but it's when in Rome, I guess,
When in Rome. Nice. Titus will probably eat that up too.
Yeah. Regarding the text that Jared brought up there, I'll say that I do think that is a difficult text, and so I see the point being that he's making there. I would tend to agree with commentators who view this as Jesus saying that his followers will do more works than he does, right? Greater in terms of quantity, but not necessarily greater in terms of quality, because it would seem like really counter to the purpose of the Gospel of John, right? I mean, whether you agree, what it's saying is true or not, we can agree that one purpose of it is to lift up Jesus as this divine being, right? That he is God himself. That's a very evident intention there.
For sure.
It wouldn't make a lot of sense if he's going to say, oh, well, anyone who follows him, then you're going to be able to do greater miracles than God does, right?
When you're raising 2 people from the dead.
Right. So I think
Jesus,
that
right?
I think we do have then good reason to think that is probably what it means, is that his followers are going to be able to do quantitatively more works than Jesus does, not qualitatively greater works than he does. That's how I interpret it. I understand if you don't agree with that interpretation.
No, I think
I've always heard with that he's talking directly to the disciples in that context. But I also looked at it kind of like David did, where it's quantitative. Why? Because in verses 1 man, there's 12, and then there's larger group than that, and stuff like that.
Right.
So I hear what he's saying.
I mean, I understand that point. Like I've read the commentaries on that too, but like there's other parts in like Mark where he talks about believers being able to do things, casting out demons and speaking in tongues and stuff. And then obviously Paul believed in miracles because he talks about miracles being one of the gifts of the Spirit, and like certain people would get certain gifts. And so it seems that there was an expectation that certain believers and followers of Jesus would be able to perform miracles or signs or works, whatever word you want to call them.
So switching tracks a little bit, do you guys think that miracles can come, like authentic miracles can come out of other religious traditions. Like, there are a lot of reported miracles. Pick a religion, there's somebody who thinks they had a miracle in it. There's, Hindu miracle workers and stuff. So would them being able to perform miracles fit into your worldview?
They would be able to do, at least, I'll let Russell give his answer, but my view is that, yes, they're able to do supernatural actions, right? So things that cannot be accomplished by nature itself. But I would say no, because at least from my Christian perspective, a miracle is something that we reserve specifically for when God does it. Now, Christianity admits that there are evil spirits, right, demons that can also have powers, and so I would acknowledge that yes, you could have something in another religion that does something that we might call supernatural, but it would not definitionally be a miracle unless God is performing. And that's why I think it is important, by the way, to add the qualifier that I did, that it has to be confirming the message of God in order to qualify as a miracle.
But a layperson who's not a Christian would probably look at that supernatural thing and say it's a miracle.
Right,
so
right. If we're working on an imprecise definition.
So, okay. So well, if we say by miracle, I mean a supernatural act, just in that one question, then yes, other people in other traditions who whatever demon or whatever decided to visit him that day can do supernatural acts. Yeah. Russell?
Yeah, I think that God can work, in that context. I think the last time I looked, Pew, Princeton, and BBC had the statistics that 1/3 of people say they experience some sort of supernatural experience. I think God, in his providence, could perform anything he wanted to get a point across. I think that, of course, as David said, we believe that, there's demons and stuff like that, and they can bring confusion and deception to whoever is experiencing that. But if it aligns with God's purpose, I think that he can. So in other words, I'm not really opposed to it, but I wouldn't confirm fully that it would be a miracle. So kind of like David's answer there. So, but I'm open to it.
So just out of curiosity, if you heard miracle claim X from a Hindu, miracle claim Y from a Christian, and which would you be more inclined to believe is true? All else being equal, same level of evidence, same number of witnesses, same veracity, whatever evidence you have, it's the same between both. Do you think they're equally likely? Do you think the Christian one's more likely?
Because I have a background information, so that I already believe that miracles have happened in the Christian tradition, that gives me kind of a more reason to have an additional plausibility on the Christian claim. But ultimately, these things do have to be decided by the evidence. So if there was good evidence, for a Hindu miracle claim, then I wouldn't rule that out just from the start. I'd be open to it, but yeah, I would tend to be more skeptical of that because I don't have any prior reason to think that a miracle is probable in the Hindu tradition.
Yeah, I would answer in the same way. I think my bias would want me to believe that the Christian was more realistic, but if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to look at the evidence, and I'm going to have to weigh it on the merits of the evidence, because also, and I'll be honest with you, we have a track record of Christians performing fake miracles too. So, I mean, there's that track record. So I would have to look at both sides. I don't think I could make a decision on it.
It'd be interesting to see, and not putting you guys on the spot, but when do you think the actual last miracle that God performed was? And I don't want you to speculate, but it'd be a weird, cool study to see actually the last miracle that I think God performed was in the Bible. I don't know.
It was July 4th, 1776.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Are you familiar with Craig Keener's 2-volume work on miracles?
I have not read it, no.
I'm not.
Oh,
no.
Okay. Well, in there, he documents what he considers modern miracles. So, he goes into this stuff, and I mean, he gets real deep into the weeds there. And I haven't read all of it, but from what I understand, some of it has more evidence than others. So I would say I find some of his examples, some of them seem persuasive to me, right? And so and these are from 19 70s, 1990s stuff, right? So I am persuaded that some of the ones that he lists in there, and unfortunately I can't think of what the specific ones are, but I would say recent history, I am persuaded that there have been a couple miracles that I think had decently strong evidence for them in modern times.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to check that out. Like, I always thought it was funny, like whenever a new saint, and this obviously you guys aren't Catholic, but like, and Catholics are Christians, whether you think they are or not. But that like whenever
We're the
somebody,
hosts. They're Christians.
they're Christians. Whenever somebody gets sainthood, they have to ascribe miracles to them, right? And so like when you actually look at some of these miracles, like if you put any scrutiny to them at all, I would say most of them really wouldn't qualify even under y'all's definition of miracles.
Like, we have a saint. We need to come with Miracle Man. Like,
Yeah.
Well, I
Like
just watched Fatima, and that convinced me.
Yeah. Like Mother Teresa, for example, they gave her one of her miracles was that somebody she prayed for that was getting cancer treatment or something, who didn't have cancer, didn't get cancer. It was something weird, like something like that. Like,
that reminds me, this is completely off topic, but there's an awesome College Humor skit where a guy goes up there. It's like a press conference after a sports game. He's like, the interviewer's like, well, you guys really choked at the end. Your defense kind of fell apart. Like, he's like, oh, definitely, all the credit goes to God. And they're like, wait a minute, you don't mean? It's like, no, definitely all God. It's like, it's like he gave the exact speech they usually get. Oh, thanks to Jesus. Except he was like, we lost it. It's all on him. Anyway, so it sounds like, Paulman, you're saying that like an unlikely event isn't good enough. Like, it has to literally be impossible naturally in order to be a miracle, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of clarification needed there because obviously we don't necessarily know what the limits of nature are. So
Yeah.
I would say on the whole, what we do know about nature, something that would not be possible, and just not some like random event, right? Like you walk into a room and there's like this ice cube just like floating in the middle of it, right? There's always got to be some kind of religious context with it. I think that greatly increases our reason for thinking that there's a miracle here, because like there doesn't seem to be any good reason for God to like be spinning an ice cube in the middle of your living room, right? But if it's like we have Jesus allegedly being the Son of God, then there's a good reason for him to be raised from the dead. So we've got more reason to take that seriously.
I mean, he puts his face on toast all the time, so I mean, he's really got plenty of time on his hands. So that seems to contrast with you, Russell, because you said not necessarily it is a miracle, but it could be your grandfather, his extremely unexpected long life, but that wouldn't be impossible. It's just an extremely unlikely event. So
yes,
that seems to be a contrast. So like common miracle claims come in the medical world all the time. That's intercessory prayer there. So like, for example, someone's got terminal cancer and they're prayed for and then the cancer's gone. That seems like it could potentially fit as a miracle under Russell's definition, but that might not fit under yours definition, Paul, because people do go into remission sometimes, right? So would that be something that you would consider as a possible candidate for a miracle, or is that because there is a possible natural pathway that it's dead on arrival?
Yeah, so this is where I think it gets really important to get into the details of these things, right? So theoretically, something like cancer going away, that could be a miracle, but it would have to be not explicable by natural cause. So if we could explain it perfectly well, in a natural way, then I would say go with that explanation. If you could not, then I would be much more open to considering that it's a miracle, especially when we've got, the context of petitionary prayer or something going on for that person. Now we've got a real reason to think that God might be doing something here. Because, if he just goes away out of nowhere, then that seems something that's like much more likely to be explained by but by recession. But generally speaking, yes. To answer your question, if it can be explained naturally, explain it naturally.
Now, this is kind of off topic, but not really, because if you are like a intelligent design proponent, then it would seem that everything is natural and God is guiding everything and therefore nothing outside of there's nothing outside of the physical abilities, capabilities of God, because he could just make everything happen through natural pathways, and therefore nothing would
intelligent design is kind of God using the raw
he's
materials,
right.
And kind of intelligently putting those things together, But we definitely have a natural explanation, so
Yeah, let me see if I understand the objection here. So, you're saying with intelligent design, God works through nature, so there's no need for him to do miracles, or
No, I'm just saying that. I was just saying since God is the creator and the designer and the mover and whatever words you want to put there,
shaker, mover, and the shaker.
Yeah, the mover and shaker of things, that everything in nature is God. Therefore, he can bend and break the rules because he's been doing it from the beginning to make things happen in the way that he wants to happen. And so there's nothing outside the realm of physical possibilities or the laws of nature, because God is the laws of nature. I don't know if that makes sense. That's a
That didn't
weed
make
conversation.
sense to me, so
You got to smoke
Yeah,
something
let's
before you have
struggle
this
here.
conversation.
I think I
I
understand.
think I need whatever's in that IPA you got, Jared.
It was the brownies I ate before, so
Oh, okay.
just joking.
So let me see if I'm getting the argument here. It's saying because the laws of nature have been put into place by God himself, like that, therefore anything that he does in nature is no more or less a law of nature. Is that
Sure? Yeah, I mean, no, it's not really making an argument. I'm just making a point that
right.
if something has to break the laws of nature for it to be a miracle, technically God does that all the time throughout creation, and because he's making the laws of nature. He's not breaking his own laws, he's just changing them, if
well,
that
I
makes
think what
sense.
they're saying is he doesn't intercede. He wrote the rules. He's like a dungeon master. He's got the rules, and he can break the rules at any time. But normally he just lets them slide. Is that
Sometimes he's like, all right, we're
fudging that D20?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this might be a really bad example. I'll see if it's helpful. But if you kind of construct, a nice elaborate fish tank, right, for your fish to live in, then we could, say that you've put the rules, the laws in place, right? You've constructed this. You've put, whatever in it, stones in it, and stuff.
pumping some oxygen in so they can breathe, and
oh yeah, all that good stuff. You can, you can't. I don't think we would say that you are breaking the boundaries you put in there if you reach in there to do something, right? And so, like I said, maybe that's really clumsy.
What are you doing with your fish, David? What do you
regularities in place that like the world normally operates under, but he can still interact in an irregular way. So we would know through the regularities, though God put them in place, that these are the regularities, so that we're able to contrast that when God is doing something unusual. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
sure,
so
yeah.
As Hume would say, it would be a violation of nature, where we would say it would be an agent feeding something new into nature.
The funny thing about that is, though, that Hume developed an argument against induction as well. Like, he made this argument that you had no justification for believing in regularity in nature, but then he also offered an argument against miracles on the basis that it would violate what we know about miracles. So, I always find it interesting that his argument against induction kind of contradicts his argument against miracles.
Yeah,
well, he's anticipating that you're going to reject his argument against induction. So he's playing 4D chess. He's got the.
You also got to think, like people like Ehrman, who's no friend to Christianity. I think he's agnostic, who wrote a very, very stern critique of Hume. And not only that, but if you look historically, his colleagues were also writing against his logic there. So you can.
Are you thinking of Ehrman? Because Ehrman.
Ehrman,
yeah, because Bart Ehrman, every debate I've ever heard him use, he uses Hume's argument.
Yeah,
but yeah, if you look into Ehrman's book, I mean, it's pretty. He gives some pretty good examples and stuff.
So I don't know how long this is scheduled to go, but I assume it's probably somewhere in the hour.
Yeah,
frame. So
hour and 10 minutes is fine.
Right. So hour and 1 minute. So how can we tell, right? Because if we're gonna examine these claims today, how what metric can we use to get at the causation behind it? Because that's really the crux of the issue, is telling what caused this particular phenomena we're seeing. Paulman has said that if there's any natural mechanism, go with the natural mechanism, which I like. I like that a lot. But a lot of people, that's not how most people approach it. So what methodology should we apply to distinguish between something that's very unlikely or perhaps something we don't currently understand and a bona fide miracle?
You want to take it first, Russell?
No, I'll let you take a stab at it first.
All right. Well, this is one reason
gathering
why.
my thoughts.
This is one reason why I think it is important to have the rule in place that if you can have any other explanation, go with it, right? If there is, a known natural explanation that gets the job done, go with it, unless, you've got some reason to think that couldn't be the explanation in this particular case, right? And so the reason I adopt that, it's the strongest possible, it seems to me that is the best way to do it, right? That way, if you have that kind of criteria in place, then, you can't just get around that, right? If we still got something that is not being explained when we've looked at every, known natural alternative, then I think we have a good reason to, consider the possibility of miracle. But another thing that helps is, again, looking at the context that it happens in. When you have a religious context that this is being proposed as a validation from God, then I think we have an additional reason to consider that, right? So you've got religious context, you've got resistance or, impossibility of being explained by any kind of natural phenomenon, any kind of natural cause, process, what have you, then that seems to me those are good reasons to consider a miracle, right? Now, there's always the possibility of the unknown, right? You could always say maybe it's an unknown natural phenomenon. And the problem there, though, is that I think when we are dealing with, we can have unknown phenomenon, but unknown phenomenon is still going to be regular, right? And it's extremely unlikely that it's going to come about in the religious sort of context. So by having those two criteria in place, I think that gives us a good reason to consider miracle over something unknown in nature. So those are my thoughts on that.
So basically, make sure I'm understanding. If there's a natural, it's kind of like a logic tree. If there's a natural explanation that works, or even if it's an unlikely one, go with that. If there isn't an natural explanation that can work, and you have on top of that some kind of religious significance, then you can be more confident that it is actually a bona fide miracle.
Right, as opposed to a natural phenomenon that we don't have an explanation for. So
it seems that, and I think that's a great standard. I really like that. That's very methodological. So it would prevent you from having egg on your face of, jump to conclusions and saying that this parking spot is a miracle and stuff like that, right? So I think that's a pretty reasonable way to approach it. But do we always, should that same standard be applied like throughout time? So for example, take the resurrection. We don't need to get in a whole resurrection debate, but I'm sure you're very familiar with the alternative explanations for the resurrection, hallucinations and stuff. And even if they're extremely unlikely, would it be fair to say that if they are unlikely but possible, that we should go with those instead of the resurrection? Or does just the weight of divine expectation kind of overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you say explanations, are you talking about like any one particular explanation, or because I don't think any one particular explanation takes care of all of the evidence relevant to the resurrection. So the alternative there, it seems to me, is that the skeptic of the resurrection either has to throw out some of the evidence, say, I don't accept that, I don't think that is, that's good evidence, or it's based on bad historiography or whatever. Something has to go out, or else you're going to have to combine 2 or 3, sometimes 4 possible explanations for the resurrection. And when you do that, I wish I could think of the term, but there's combinational something or other. When you have to start combining factors that lack independent evidence, then like the prior probability on your hypothesis goes way down. So if you have any one alternative to the resurrection that gets you there, I don't think there is one, but if you have it, then yes, use that instead of the resurrection. If you have to start combining them together, then like the prior goes way down on that.
What happens? Priors multiply. So if you have it, that's ad hoc hypotheses basically. If you're adding one, that the probability space you need is necessarily going to shrink because you need the probability space of A plus with the intersection of B with the intersection of C. So then that's what nobody cares about the math anyway.
You explain it better than me.
So basically, if we skeptics could come up with a model that you thought addressed all the evidence and came up with a natural pathway for the resurrection, or insert any other miracle you'd like, even if it relied on unlikely mechanisms, but still established
within the realm
of natural laws, even if they are very unlikely, that we should go with that.
Yeah, now I do need to add a qualifier on that. That's if you can explain the pertinent evidence for the resurrection, right? You got the whole case, you've got the evidence established. Yes, if you have a natural explanation, go for that. Because sometimes what people will try to do, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but sometimes what people try to do is they will come up with radically improbable ways of getting rid of particular pieces of evidence, right? And then they'll try to bring in my criteria right there and say, well, if you got a natural explanation, then you should go with that. That does not apply to the particular pieces of evidence to the case, right? Because I don't need a miracle to explain, say, that the apostles died as martyrs for their faith, right? That is not a miraculous claim. So you have to go with the best explanation there. You don't get to bring in some wildly improbable hypothesis to account for that to get out of a miracle later on. So it only applies when we're making the direct inference from the evidence to the explanation. But when we're going to the leading up to it, like the supporting pieces of evidence, it's always best explanation there. Never do you get to go to a less probable hypothesis just to get out of a miracle later on.
Now, if I was God, I'd be pretty pissed off if all the Christians were applying your standard, because they'd be like, I'm doing miracles left and right, and Paulman keeps saying it doesn't fit his criteria. I was like,
yeah, guys, I guess I would answer that similarly to David. Inference to the best explanation, and Descartes was famous for saying that acquiring our methodology is a good way to acquire knowledge. So I think that applies, and we do what we can, and we examine the evidence the best we can, and we come to the best conclusion we can. And with having volition like we do, some of us are gonna come to opposite conclusions. I think that's a given.
So
David's smiling, so I know he wants to say something else.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm really glad that Jared isn't God right now. So,
or is he? So just to close
Angel in
out
disguise.
with an appeal to emotion, So this isn't so much an argument as just an observation. Some leading into the problem of suffering. So you have miracles like our friend Titus. One of his favorite miracles is that his wife's tooth was like turned around. People have miracles where like Tim mentions friend's cornea gets cleared or whatever. Does it trouble you, or does it bother you to think, like, assuming some of those miracles are genuine, that God is evidently curing the tooth issues of some middle-class girl who's receiving good medical treatment and will be fine for the rest of her life, but not interceding in much more serious cases, starving children, people dying of malaria? Like, how do you wrestle with that? Or do you? Maybe you're fine with it.
Say that. Ask that one more time.
So basically,
I'm interacting with the people on the live chat too, so I got to kind of keep that going. So
you've got miracle claims of people being healed mostly in well-developed westernized countries, middle-class people who have treatable conditions, have their teeth fixed or their eyes fixed or whatever, and assuming that some quantity of those are real. You've got other issues that seem, at least from my perspective, to be much more pressing. The child who's dying of malaria, the kid who has leukemia, and they've done nothing to deserve it. So do you ever have to wrestle with, like, why is God helping these people who arguably don't really need his help. I mean, it's nice, but they'll be fine, even if that tooth never gets turned around, versus someone who's literally going to die a painful, horrible death. Why this one and not that one?
I do wrestle with it. I'd probably come to a bit of a different conclusion. So in Keener's work, he talks about a guy that he was talking to. I think it was a pastor in Africa, and he had the splitting headache, right? And he said that the pastor, he was from India, sorry. And he laid his hands on him, right? And he said, tried to, healed him. And he said, Keener said nothing happened, right? He wasn't healed. And the pastor said, hey, if you went over to India, you would have been healed, because God works over there, because you guys got all the medicine and all the stuff that you need over here. But over there, they need that. They need those miracles. They need that. And I think a lot of Keener's work focuses on miracles that are happening abroad. And I've always personally thought, now you don't have, you can't quote me for this, but I've always said, why are miracles so more sparse here? And I've wrestled with that even more than I have in other cases. But yeah, why are they less here? Why do we have more skeptics here versus in other third world countries and stuff? Why are they claiming that all these things are miracles? Is it a lack of education? And you've got to wrestle with all that. You're right. You got to wrestle with everything. Why can't, if I live in Papua New Guinea, I get a cut and within an hour it's infected? You know what I mean? And then, why over here, I'm living to 80 years old, people living to 80 years old and, well taken care of and so forth. So yeah, it's definitely, there is that element I think every Christian should wrestle with. We should try to make the world a better place, in my opinion. And we should try to, I even know some missionaries now that they're not like your typical missionaries. You go overseas and you spend 2 weeks building a shed, or you walk the streets and pray for people. No, these guys are actually learning the language of people. They stay with them. I think that the missions trip is averaging like 10 years minimum. They've got to be there. They've got to live amongst the tribe. They have to learn their language. They have to, and through that, not only do they teach them the Bible, obviously, but they're teaching them how to read. They're teaching them how to write. They're helping them understand economics. Because once they teach them how to read and write, they can teach them how to do hygiene, economics, and so forth. And that's that focus of that missionary journey. So yeah, I know I went a little long there.
So it'd basically be like, I don't know, but it's my responsibility to fill the gap.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would go with that. So,
Paulman?
Yeah, there's kind of two dimensions to it there. So there's kind of the abstract problem of evil, right? Like, why does suffering happen to these faceless people? And then you've got the the closer to home one, right? When it's actually real people. When I'm dealing with it the abstract way, I know the theodicies. I know how to deal with it. I have the academic answers there as to why God allows evil, and as to why he might not even step in to perform a miracle in some cases. I think there's a few different reasons for that. But when it does come down to the personal level, like when it's a real person, I found these answers aren't really good there. They don't satisfy me. Right. And so, there's the issue there, of course. Again, if God's doing miracles all the time, then like, how are we going to tell when a real miracle happens? But, on the other hand, this person's suffering. God, can't you help them out?
This one, Yeah.
Right. And so, I don't want to seem insensitive to that, because I think that it's a legitimate question, and it's a very hard question. And I guess here's where I come down on that, is that when I have something I don't understand, I like to rely on what I do. And so I think that when what I do understand is at the academic level, that there can be reasons for this. And so it's better to go with what I do understand there than to, reject all of that because I've got a situation here that I don't understand. So in any particular instance, I can't tell you why God doesn't do it. I could give a theodicy if we're like debating it as to why he might be allowing it. And it may not even be correct, right? This is just a reason to make sense of it, to show that there's no incompatibility between a good God and this person suffering. So because I am aware of that, helps me not jettison my entire faith on the basis of it. But that doesn't mean it's not hard, doesn't mean it's not difficult, doesn't mean it isn't something that I wrestle with even, more often than I might want to admit with some people. So, it's a hard question. And that's what I've got on it. Go with what you do know, not what you don't.
Well, thanks, guys, for having us on and for letting us take over your podcast. This has been fun. At least it was fun for me.
Yeah.
I think the key takeaway here is that it's important to examine your assumptions and to be willing to accept new explanations and to always be willing to update your belief system based on what you observe. And sometimes there aren't easy answers, and that's okay. If there were only easy questions, then philosophers would have nothing to justify their paychecks. Not that they do anyway.
Yeah, not that they do anyways. But
Well, thanks for the handoff there, Jordan. Again, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate that you're part of the family and that you explore these questions with us, even if we come down on different sides. That's what PRA is for. We want to be able to do that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have a guest month, so it's not just about one thing, but everybody could participate, and we could, it would inspire our guests to think of hard questions and to get on here and share them with us and to get debates on it. I think it's good to talk about these hard issues. I was going to also say, one of my premises for the argument of miracles, one of my points is that you have to be willing to change your mind. That's one of the things. You have to be willing to not only change your mind or adjust your view and stuff on things when it comes to miracles. And that goes both ways. If it does turn out to be legit, I would hope the skeptic would change his mind. And just like when the Christian finds out that somebody had done Facebook research on him and slipped it to the televangelist, call him out.
Yeah.
I would love that.
That Facebook PhD.
I promote calling them out, man. I think that's one of the hardest, but as far as emotionally hardest, but I think it's essential for apologists to call people out on that type of stuff. We have to. But anyways, guys, we really appreciate it again, taking us up on this offer and coming on. David, you got anything else you want to say?
No. I was gonna give some random speech that I had, and I'm just gonna not. So we're good.
We're good.
Can we give a quick plug?
Sure. Yeah, actually, yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, well, too bad because I'm checking and I'm the host. So, so again, thanks. If you guys enjoyed this conversation, you can head on to our podcast, Reasons to Doubt. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, wherever. We also are now mirroring our stuff onto our YouTube channel. So if you prefer to consume on YouTube, you can go there too. We talk about not just like religious stuff, but so we do talk about religion, obviously, but we also talk about aliens and anti-vaxxers, and if skepticism, QAnon, if skepticism applies in even the slightest, most tenuous fashion, we'll talk about it. So. There's our plug.
Right on.
Just like to wrap up real
guys,
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say to David Paulman's point earlier, I agree with him that if miracles happen all the time, then they wouldn't be special. And so, I think it's important, like you said, to be skeptical of miraculous claims because it's going to diminish them if there actually are miracles that occur. Yeah. And so, if there are, I want to be able to spot them easier. So,
I think Tim McGrew gives a good example of that. He says, I'm going to show you this text. And then he puts up a blackboard and the text is in black, so you can't really see it. And then he's like, okay, if I take it away and takes the blackboard away, and then you can see the text clearly. It's pretty interesting. I thought it was,
Tim McGrew is a beast, man.
Yeah, he's pretty good. But guys, again, thank you, everybody. If you liked today's conversation, again, please subscribe. We need all the subscribers we can get. We need and so does Jordan and them. Subscribe to them on YouTube. And again, we thank you guys for listening and watching. Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more content as we got Fuzz Rana coming up on the 19th. We have a debate on the 8th that I'm going to be co-hosting with my friend Caleb. He will be the main host since it is co-host month. So yeah, we're gonna have fun. Other than that, see you guys later.